Nixon sent Henry Kissinger to be his ambassador to this world, to Mrs. Graham and to the Georgetown crowd. And Kissinger did great with this crowd. He's charming and funny, but pretty soon he was making sly jokes about the president, pretty much on a weekly basis, joking about fearless leader and talking about his drinking habits. Of course this got back to Nixon. How could it not? And Nixon tried to be philosophical about it. He said, well, Kissinger's insecure, he needs this kind of support, and he would tease Kissinger. He would say, when Kissinger was leaving for the evening, he would say, there goes Henry off to talk to his Georgetown friends, or there goes Henry off to talk to the Washington Post. But of course it wounded him, and he just couldn't help it. He wanted to get even with Kissinger and with the Georgetown crowd, and that kind of festering resentment was just building in him. And those famous White House tapes, interestingly, he installed those tapes to rebut Kissinger. The reason why he put those tapes in was to have a record so that he could rebut Kissinger's version of history. Because Kissinger was going around saying, I'm the dove, Nixon's the hawk, I'm the reasonable guy, Nixon's the crazy person. There was something to that, but it wasn't the whole truth by any means. And Nixon wanted a record on things like going to China. Going to China was not Kissinger's idea. It was Nixon's idea. In fact, when Haldeman told Kissinger that Nixon wanted to go to China, Kissinger's response in 1969 was, quote, fat chance. Now the tapes are terrible. A lot of you have heard excerpts of them. They don't lie. Nixon said terrible, vile things, anti-Semitic remarks, racist things. But I listened to a lot of these tapes, hundreds of hours of these tapes, and my strong impression is a lot of this was posturing on Nixon's part. When he's being awful, it's this kind of awful fake macho man thing. It's not kind of unusual for that period and that type, a certain kind of male who has to show what a man he is by swearing a lot. The swearing was no more swearing that happened, say, at the Washington Post Company where I worked. But there was an arrogance there, and yet it contrasts with his coolness at other times. When he's talking to world leaders, when he's talking to Brezhnev or Mao Zedong, Nixon could be very cool, and he was good with world leaders because he didn't preach at them. He's terrible at small talk, so he didn't even try. He talked about interest and not ideology. And he got right down to business, and they liked that about him. And he was a fairly cool hand in those circumstances. In his office with Haldeman and Ehrlichman, he could get wound up and say a lot of very bad stuff, but there was a kind of tinny quality to his swearing. LBJ, he knew how to swear. Nixon, there's something fake about it. And there's another side to Nixon. Late at night, Nixon would take his yellow pad, his yellow legal pad, which his aides called his best friend, and he would go to his hideaway or the Lincoln sitting room, and he would make notes to himself. And those notes, he would describe the man he wanted to be. And he would use words like joyful and serene and inspiring and confident, all words we really don't associate with Richard Nixon. But this was the person Nixon wished to be. He didn't do this once or twice. He did this all the time. And he aspired to be somebody he couldn't really be.